Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about hopefully, the finale of this whole Ukraine business and the Hegseth Hoedown that happened on Capitol Hill. I figure, if we're going to be talking about future conflict, we might as well look at how the left and the right were grilling the Trump's man who will oversee future conflict. Welcome to the show. This is the Council on Future Conflict. My name is Scott. I am the proprietor of the Future Conflict channel. And today is episode 465. I think we've got some good stuff to talk about, but I want to issue a warning. This is my second full day back in Korea. And let me tell you, jet lag, you've never had jet lag until you've gone 12 hours the opposite direction, whether being in Korea and going to the States, or being in the States and going back to Korea. So if I seem a little loopy at any point, I'm going to blame I'm saying it now. Apologies all around if I get loopy, but yes, absolutely. How chat? How you doing? Going for Evan Door, After Concept, Limey. Nice to see. Let's see. Maddie B says, Sean at potentially criminal turned me on here. So let's see how it goes. Hopefully, I'll disappoint, but I probably will. Just assume that I'll disappoint you and then be surprised when you actually learn something. How about that? How about them apples? Watcher, how you doing today, brother?
Doing all right, Scott. Thanks for asking. Ready for another exciting show.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, don't don't blow it all at once. I mean, come on, man. Your enthusiasm gap is,
It is early, so I am still waking up. But yeah, I'm excited. Wish Joe could be here, but we haven't heard from him yet this morning, so we'll see how that goes. Um, but yeah, apart from
yeah. I,
that,
mean, I put out the call to the CFC group chat, and it just looks
sent
like
up the bat
it
signal.
is. I hate to say it, as much as I appreciate the amazing chat showing up at this time. I know it's tough for council members to just pop in at whether it's like where you guys are at. It's like 6 in the morning, right? Or are you Pacific? Are you Pacific or Mountain?
Mountain. Yeah, it's
Yeah, so it's 6 o'clock in the morning. So I know that's tough just to kind of, oh shit, let's just go and do it. But hey. All right. Yeah, there's a couple other people who, same here with the Sean thing. Yeah. I'm glad. I know Sean was so kind to throw his chat to us on was it Friday's show? I think it was,
hmm
and we figured out at the last minute how to make that work. So that was awesome. Welcome. Like I said, we try not to let you down. All right, let's jump right into it, shall we? First up, I mean, what's better than future conflict than current conflict? Uh, and that's essentially what we have here. Colorado apartment. This is a post millennial article. Colorado apartment complex closes over imminent threat after Tren de Aragua infiltration. I think so. This is Watcher. I think this is the complex that was involved in that first big story when Tren de Aragua kind of blew up. Um,
Yep. And the place is now closing.
yeah. Uh, Shocking when international crime syndicate moves into your apartment complex and locks it down, and the police probably don't really do much. This is what happens. Um, Judge Sean Day wrote in the order that a 60-day complex is posing an imminent threat to public safety, so it's being shut down after being taken over by the gang by the courts. Uh, let's see, officials have previously said the complex taken over by TDA has been an epicenter for unmitigated violence, crimes, and property crimes. Since September 23rd, 2023, there have been over 60 criminal incidents that are linked to the apartment complex in Aurora. The police chief, Todd Chamberlain, said of the complex after the order came down, the problem is a mismanaged location that will allow crime to flourish. I think that's kind of putting it lightly. I mean, Watcher, what's your kind of take on this where, essentially they're shutting the complex down because of reasons, like it's the complex's fault?
Well, I think part of the complication here that people might not grasp is that, as far as I understand the story, the original owner was strong-armed into selling the complex to Trende Aragua.
Yeah.
So
sell the complex, or just kind of?
yes. No. Like at first it was just, hey, we're gonna do what we want, and then eventually, because remember this has been going on since like the middle of 2023. Within 6 months they stepped up and were like, okay, yeah, you're selling it to us, and for a song.
Okay, that just seems kind of weird to me. But
Well, I mean, when
figure.
the people are doing what they're doing and the police don't respond, you kind of run out of options.
Yeah, Maddie. So instead of arresting them, they evict the tenants. Yes, so that's kind of where I'm at with this. It's like they're obviously making this more about it's like the situation is bad and we're going to blame the apartment type thing, versus taking any responsibility for policing our own community. Let me get back to the article here. Let's see. We're not going to arrest until we verify each individual in this incident is in custody. Every individual who mistreated another human being the way these victims were treated is in custody, and we will use again every resource at our ability to do that. So, I mean, I get the feeling like this is a lot of half measures after they basically dropped the ball. Unfortunately, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm catching up with the chat here. All right. Anything else on this, Watcher?
No, it speaks for itself.
Yeah, this is one of those. I wish we had Joe here to give a little. He's always got a little more Trende Aragua kind of lore to drop on us. But this is what happens when you have an unmanaged border and an absolute lack of love for the American people to protect them and do the right thing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. So this one, I thought of Stan when I saw this, and this is one of those kind of stories I think it's important because it may not rise to the level of frontline pages in the U.S., but I think this is one that's going to have a lot of implications long term. Azerbaijan signaled that it might be preparing its own special operation against Armenia, referring back to the Russia's special operation conducted against the Ukraine. Azerbaijani president gave a nearly 3-hour-long interview to several local TV channels last week, during which he signaled that his country might be preparing its own special operation against Armenia along the lines of Russia's ongoing one in Ukraine. That's all great, like increasing your security posture and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, is it securing the country or then, getting skimmed off the top and send, into the meat grinder in places like Donetsk or, Kursk or something along those lines? Watch, you got this clear
been a while. It's been a
Yeah.
while.
Aliyev began that part of his interview by defending Azerbaijan's increased military budget as a response to the arms race that Armenia installed. Um, it's the arms race that Armenia initiated. This is being partially fueled by the European Peace Facility, whose military loans were written off after a certain point, he said. Armenia is therefore basically receiving arms from the bloc for free. To make matters even more alarming, an Armenian U.S. EU cooperation platform was launched last April, which Aliyev claimed to be the de facto military component. Man, I tell you what, this is. I'm having trouble reading. Yeah, this is really. So anybody who's been following along for this, go back up to the top and where we got this map of Azerbaijan and Armenia. So what is it? Was it last year or the year before last? I think it was last year. We had basically Azerbaijan push through this little strip down there in the bottom and seize large swaths of Armenian land in order to kind of connect the two pieces of Azerbaijan. And of course, you had a healthy amount of, retaliation against the Armenian people, and it's essentially like the Hatfields and the McCoys. Honestly, there's never a good way to kind of get away from this. So, Watcher.
I need to look it up, but I think it was actually shortly before Ukraine kicked off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was when it got kind of like hairy.
It was the as far as I understand, and still am trying to track and confirm some of this, but it appears to be the first use of autonomous weapons in a combat application. I've been talking about that for a long time, though.
Well, the interesting thing here is this is one of those kind of conflicts that's been going on for a long time, and you had all kinds of interesting folks piling on to support. So, for instance, you had Iran, you had Iran and Russia really supporting Armenia, but more so than supporting Armenia, they were basically standing against the enemies of Iran and Russia in order to push, just the material, right? So, for instance, you had Israel teamed up with Azerbaijan for some of the aerial, the loitering aerial munitions, which was pretty interesting. They first used the Bayraktar. I think so. The Azerbaijan is basic. My understanding culturally is Azerbaijan is very close, if not basically just an offshoot of Turkish culture. It's a Turkish language, and I think the kids can kind of go back and forth between Turkey and Azerbaijan fairly indistinguishably and continue to communicate. When I was living in Turkey, some of the Turkish officers I worked with basically said, "Yeah, I can understand him." It's like I don't speak their language, but I can understand what the president says when he gives an address or something like that. So I thought that was interesting, but yeah, there's a lot of potential for a lot of blood, and this thing going high in orbit.
Agreed. The previous resolution was not really a resolution, and it left a lot of people hurt. They basically had their own little trail of tears there for an evacuation from some areas. yeah, this is just another one of those intractable problems.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a solution to it or not. Probably not. Too much bad blood in that area. Like I said, it kind of reminds me of the Hatfields and the McCoys a lot of times.
Yeah.
But then again, what are you going to do?
Well, and it's hard for us to take any space in this because unless we want to ally with Azerbaijan, um, because of our NATO ally Turkey, they kind of tie our hands in a lot of this because of how heavily they support Azerbaijan.
Yeah, this is right. All right. We're screaming through this. All right. Fortress DC, going on to the next. So we got the inauguration coming up, and it stands to reason that folks may be a little disturbed by the potential for protests and whatnot. And then we have seen some credible threats by Antifa and Antifa looking light kind of organizations. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with this. President-elect Donald Trump's second inauguration could be the most militarized in U.S. history, according to a report released Monday. Citing U.S. officials, the Telegraph reports that nearly 7,800 soldiers will join approximately police officers to patrol. That's a weird sentence. During the peaceful transfer of power, the newspaper also reveals that two FBI field officers. Let's see. At least 30 miles of fencing will be used to keep the Trump and inauguration guests, including world leaders and top U.S. lawmakers across the country, safe from a series of potential violent threats. I mean, Watcher, who's the most likely people to threaten and attack President Trump in this period of time?
Oh my goodness. That is not a short list. But the one I'm hearing the most rumble about underground is definitely, we'll just call it uh, leftist groups, Antifa and John Brown Club and various other tie-in groups that they have associated with them, that have said that they're planning mass protests and civil disobedience for that date, but I'm not sure they're going to get the kind of coverage they need to actually do the violence that they like to do.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of those kind of things where they are clearly the most likely culprit, but ultimately, who knows what? Um, yeah, this shit. Ultimately, we're not going to be sure. I'd love for it to be a big nothing burger, with no violent protesters showing up on the scene. But hey, what do I know? And what right do I have to have any of my prayers regarding this answered? So that'll be my prayers, that he has a safe and successful inauguration day, and we'll move on from here. We've been saying for the longest time that there's still another shoe potentially that can drop between now and inauguration day. Even if Trump is able to kind of have a good initial foothold into the office on an inauguration day, I think it's got to be seriously considered. You know, um, where 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 are we going to go with this, right? I don't know. I mean, I'll be happy if nothing happens, because then we can just kind of focus on the world getting to be a better place, hopefully under the Trump administration. But that's a big cross your fingers on that one too.
Agreed.
It says here, additionally, National Guard members from all 50 states will operate checkpoints where the inauguration observers will enter the National Mall in front of the Capitol building, while the federal government will enact a no-fly zone over D.C. A host of items have been barred from the inauguration area, including laptops, water bottles, even selfie sticks. Tensions, no doubt, are running high during Trump sheathing in. I just have like a vision of supporters, turning into a massive Trump rally or something like that. But I get the feeling that it'll be others there. So you're going to have a coalition of left-wing organizations that are already said that they're going to protest, including Planned Parenthood, Abortion Access Now. They are set up to hold a People's March on Saturday to protest Trump's landslide win over his Democratic opponent. Just kind of scanning ahead. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser had also vowed to keep the area secure for the peaceful transfer. Secret Service has been subject of intense scrutiny after gunmen attempted to assassinate Trump during the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a thing. Like there is a threat, but part of me wonders that if we're kind of going a little too much on some of this. What do you think there, Watcher?
I think that the man whose opinion I'd like to hear more just joined. Hey,
I
Joe.
wasn't aware we started an hour early today. My bad.
Oh, this is the 8 p.m.
We're good.
Eastern. Joe, good morning. How are you doing, brother?
I'm good, I guess. How about you?
Isn't this our normal time?
No.
I thought it was.
Yeah, it's 8 p.m. Eastern is our normal time.
Okay, well, it's 6 a.m. Mountain. A.m. You just said p.m., so...
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, a.m. I meant a.m. in the morning. Yeah. I'm sorry. I always start the show right at about 10:15 Korea time in the p.m. So yes, this is the. I'm sorry, Joe. I didn't realize that we had a miscommunication. I apologize, Joe. I'm glad you can, in any kind of form, shape, or function. I'm glad you can join us. How you doing, brother?
I'm well and good. I'm well and good.
Well, you seem more awake than me. I'll be honest with you. I am like jet lagged. I'm feeling it, the kind of the loopiness of jet lag. So hopefully you can help me out here. So we were just talking about this Fortress DC thing where they're basically building the security, around the inauguration stand and the and all that kind of whatnot. I mean, what's your kind of take on the potential threat of the day? They've talked about a kind of a panoply of left-wing organizations. You've got the Planned Parenthood and Abortion Access Now are set to hold the so-called People's March on Saturday. What's your kind of take on what the threat landscape looks like for the actual event itself?
Well, first of all, it's funny that that we're calling it Fortress DC and all that stuff when the left did it themselves for years.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Second, I think it's a good idea. I think that there's a lot more threat out there than what they say. Interestingly, a couple of days ago, the FBI told you there was no threat to the inauguration. And on the very same day, they mentioned the heightened threat of copycat vehicle attacks. So both can't be true. And I can't believe that they actually expect you to think that there's no threat against a Donald Trump inauguration. I mean, it's absolutely silly.
Oh, nobody's going to go, so nobody's going to threaten it. Right.
And then I guess yesterday or the day before, we find a terror cell in Chicago with police uniforms, bombs, and weapons. That was not a, hey, we're thinking about doing something down the road plot. That is a, we are just about to launch something plot.
Yeah.
You have to ask yourself how many more groups like that are out there.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you've got the individual people who might be inclined to attack a large crowd. You may see a copycat of what we saw around New Year's, in Louisiana or something like that. So, these are the kind of things that I see potential for a problem. But hopefully they're kind of figuring that part out.
And interestingly, just a couple of days ago, the Biden administration issued an executive order signifying the lines of succession for several different offices should the secretaries or department heads and deputy department heads be killed, which was interesting.
Yeah.
And especially since some of them were a little bit odd, like designating that the third in line for the Department of Justice is the chief attorney of the Southern District of New York. That should be a little farther down the line than number 3, I would think. But
yeah,
it's just an interesting thing. I don't know. We will see. There will definitely be violence on Monday.
Yeah, even if it's localized and small scale, we will still see some amount of violence. I wouldn't, Joe, we've talked about the fact that Antifa and a lot of these left-wing groups are actively training, actively kind of getting after it to become a little more competent when it comes to direct action events and things like that. I think that that's potentially one of the threats we could see here. Even maybe like some sort of a sniper type of event or something like that. I mean, just out of a reminder, Trump has been attempted to be assassinated twice, and so I don't know why this event wouldn't potentially draw a third assassin. So, go figure. All right, anything else, Joe?
Well,
No?
I think before we go any further, since we've burned through all of our odds and ends topics already, we asked Joe to tell us what's going on at tacticalwisdom.com, and specifically about the January 17th Stick and Knife Combatives course about to take place up in the Great White North.
Got a couple folks registered for this. You're gonna come out here and pay me, and I'm gonna beat you with a stick and stab you with a knife. No, we're gonna teach. Not every situation enables you to carry a gun to it, or a gun is not the proper response. So we teach you to use a stick, which would include things like expandable batons or any sort of object that you can find to defend yourself. That's the first 4 hours. And the second 4 hours, we're going to apply those same skills to the knife. So it's going to be good times. I like teaching that kind of stuff. People like taking it, and we're going to have a little bit of fun with it. We might even break out the old Shield Arms Bob knife that we have sitting right here on the desk.
Nice.
So good stuff. And then after that, the next 2 days, Kay from Combat Studies Group will be here, and we're doing Ground Rod 2, where you learn a little bit more about digital privacy and security and securing your comms. Digital tradecraft is what he calls it. So good stuff. And then we are already deep into planning for next month's Scout, Recce, Fieldcraft, and AK courses, all within a week. If you come down there, you can catch my Fieldcraft, followed immediately by NC Scout's Scout and Recce course. And then after that will be his AK course. So we have a lot of training on the docket. Time's getting short. Get on out here and do some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you've had so many good events there here recently. The Boy Scout event, I thought, was a good one. Kind of getting back to the old school ideas of the Boy Scout. I bet if they're in that local area, they're not very woke.
Yeah, no, this was actually a pretty solid group. Actually, Watcher, I want to send you a couple of pictures real quick to the DM chat that I want to talk about. A couple weeks ago, I reached out to a local food company here called Right on Trek Foods, which is they make backpacking foods, right? And they I talked to them about partnering with the camp here, and they decided to not only send me some samples at the camp, but they sent a pallet right there, a pallet of food to the food pantry in order to help homeless vets and hungry vets. There's a second one up there too. 2 pallets of different backpacking foods for us to hand out to vets to carry with them and take out in the field. I thought it was pretty awesome. Right on Trek did this without telling anybody. I just showed up the other day at the food pantry and they're like, "You have any idea where this came from?" I'm like, "Actually, I do." So we want to thank Right on Trek Foods for a massive donation of food to feed homeless and hungry vets in Northwest Montana. They didn't want a lot of fanfare. They're going to get it anyway. I just think it was fantastic. So if you're looking for someone to buy outdoor food from, think about them first because they did a good thing. So
yeah, good point there, Joe. All right,
you reminded me of that. So
let's look at our segment number 1 here. Joe. I just want to take you to take note. We're blazing through these topics today. Trump affirms he will meet Putin very quickly after inauguration. Now, this is not a big surprise. I think we all knew that Trump is looking at potentially ending or being involved in the ending of the Ukraine crisis as his first potential feather in his cap, assuming he doesn't do anything else crazy on the international stage, like, buying Greenland or something like that. Otherwise, in the more conventional sense, I think this is looking to be the first one he's really wanting to put his name on. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has unveiled his plans to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin very quickly after being sworn in on January 20th. He said in a Monday interview. He was interviewed by the conservative news outlet Newsmax and was asked about specifics on his strategy to end the Ukraine war, to which Trump replied, "There's only one strategy, and it's up to Putin." And this actually is pretty realistic assessment, I think, Joe. It's an assessment that basically says, listen, if we can't convince Russia to do something, they're just going to keep fighting. Everybody thinks that there's some sort of compulsion, like you can put a gun to somebody's head or something like that, but you can't. Russia has to want to stop fighting. Hey, Hart, thanks, brother.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't offer some sort of incentive, which is what the West as a collective group has refused to do, there's no reason for Russia to ever stop. They're making gains. They're winning. You have to do something to try and put an end to the bloodletting.
All right. Sorry, just kind of. I'm having to read ahead just to make sure that I am kind of following the thread here. Let's see. I know this is Trump continuing to speak. I know Putin wants to meet, and I'm going to meet very quickly. I would have done it sooner, but you have to get into the office. He says that preparations are underway for a meeting between Trump and the Russian leader. I do expect a call, at least in the coming days and weeks, Walt said. That would be a step, and we'll take it from there. Various reports in the last week have made clear the meeting that Putin and seeking a breakthrough towards Ukraine's peace is Trump's biggest foreign policy priority at this point. Though his eye is still on China, which is a top priority as well. Trump noted at the time that he's had a lot of communication with Chinese President Xi Jinping and has spoken with numerous other world leaders, but has yet to speak to Putin. Which, Joe, I think that if Putin is involved in an active war, I think not calling him is probably the right thing, because it would seem to be, a little too eager, maybe. I don't know. I could at least understand the rationale behind that. But he says that President Putin wants to meet. He said that very publicly, and then we have to get the war over. That's a bloody mess, Trump said about the war in Ukraine. Any pitfalls you see with this, Joe? I mean, I think it makes sense. I think this is the right decision for Trump and his team. What's your take?
Well, the pitfall is Trump being Trump at this point. This is the right decision. It's absolutely the way we ought to be. However, Trump being Trump, the minute someone who he wants to like him says, hey, you know, we probably shouldn't be meeting with the Russians. They're the bad guys. Trump will inevitably do what Trump does, and that's try to appease others.
Yeah.
It's not going to work for him. I think he has to bite the bullet. I think he has to do this because ending the war is more important than being liked.
Well, you know, the other thing, too, is that ultimately he's going to need to either potentially coerce, compel, or otherwise cajole these guys into an agreement. I think that there's a chance for a fairly basic framework, especially if it's an armistice versus an actual peace talks, you know, like a declaration of peace or whatever. But I mean, my biggest fear is that they get talked into having some sort of NATO presence as a buffer force between the Russians and Ukrainians.
I don't think the Russians will ever go for that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that, you know, unless it was, you know, maybe certain NATO countries they might go for, but you know, I think ultimately this is one thing that's probably going to be a bridge too far.
No, I think that they'll look for a non-aligned nation, an allegedly non-aligned nation, like, I don't know, Brazil or Kenya. I don't know, but it's not going to be a NATO nation.
They're going to bring those poor Kenyan police officers out of Haiti, but only to stick them right in between the Russians and the Ukrainians.
Kenya has had a few peacekeeping deployments that went well. In less conflict-ridden regions, but they don't have the best experience in Africa, though.
Let's be honest. You know, where they're at right now, anything would be an improvement.
Correct.
Well, speaking of Ukraine and Russia, we've got a little bit of news coming out of Ukraine that says Zelensky is ready to hand North Korean POWs to Kim Jong-un. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has made an unprecedented offer of a prisoner exchange deal involving North Korea. Over the weekend, Zelensky announced that 2 wounded North Korean soldiers, only 2, Joe, of all the North Koreans that have supposedly been encountered, only 2 were captured.
I don't imagine surrender as much in the North Korean vocabulary.
Yeah, right. I think you're absolutely right on that one. That's probably not their first thought on the day. This was not an easy task. Russian forces and other North Korean military personnel usually execute their wounded to erase any evidence of North Korea's involvement in the war against Ukraine. Zelensky had said on X, neither Moscow nor Pyongyang have acknowledged the North Korean troops have been captured or killed. I would be surprised if the North Koreans are not being captured or killed, but I can, knowing what I know about North Koreans, executing their wounded would not be out of line, I think.
Well, it'd be out of line. It wouldn't be out of character.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's what I meant. I think that's a more correct word to put. It's out of line, but not out of character. Ukraine is ready to hand over Kim Jong-un soldiers to him if he can organize their exchange for our warriors who are being held back. So what? You're going to get 2 Ukrainian soldiers for the 2 North Korean soldiers? Not quite an even trade.
I'm not sure what North Korea is holding that Ukraine wants.
Well, I guess my thoughts would be is that Zelensky would say, hey, talk to Russia and get them to release an equal number of soldiers, you know, like Ukrainian soldiers, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, that's just it. North Korea doesn't have the ability to just force Russia to do that. So there's a video down here of this North Korean kid.
A $5 Rumble rant from Pinochet.
Oh, you know what? I just realized I don't have the Rumble chat open.
Well, while he's figuring that out, Pinochet, by the way, watch your mail. Your order is on its way, and you have some artwork in the book. So,
Oh, some stick figures en route, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Peter says helicopters for $5 says, gentlemen, for the record, I am not a general. I am the E4 Mafia at best, because in the Army infantry, it's a lower rank. It's a slower rank up unless you are a prized DEI chicken. Will the Dems push for drafting women? No, the women draft thing will not be pushed by the Dems. I'm not hoping for any kind of grand scouring of political correctness out of the military, but what I do hope for is that we get back to the kind of pre-DEI military, maybe I hate to say this, Joe, but the good old days of Obama, when all we had was, the trainings weren't nearly as onerous back then as they are nowadays.
You can't say good old days and then follow Obama. It does not work.
It's only Joe. It's only in comparison to what we've seen recently.
DEI is just a ridiculous, self-destructive and suicidal path, and we're the only nation in the world that's gone this far down it. Even the rest of the Western nations are like, "Hey, you might be going a little far with this."
Yeah,
and here we are.
I want to rethink that. Do a bit of a rethink on that policy, there, buddy. All right. Pentagon reluctantly admits Russian incremental gains in eastern Ukraine. So, Joe, we've talked for a long time, ever since the election, basically, that the interim period before inauguration is going to be everybody setting the deck, right? For their day one of the Trump administration position, so that they've got the best possible position in order to get the best deal they can. This is not just Russia. This is all over the world. I think we're seeing this. So this goes to no surprise that Russia would continue to push in the Donbass area in order to increase their position. And specifically, Joe, we were kind of talking early on, they may even try to push as far as the Dnieper. I don't think that's the case. I think that they're going to just kind of go for some of these kind of key logistics and transportation nodes. Whoa, hold on a second here. Well-armed Corgi for $19.99 says, been a while since I've thrown y'all some change. I agree, though. Change in the military culture comes slow. It's going to take more than 1 4-year administration to change the culture in the military. I agree, but I think there are some pretty critical things that could be changed very quickly. You may see a lot of initial changes, but then it'll plateau out, and it'll be interesting to see if you have any resignations within the force, but basically say, oh, I can't believe Trump's doing this. I can't stand to serve a man like this, but we shall see.
There's probably a lot of people who've planned that exact resistance move, right? I'm going to resist by resigning my position, and here's why. And they go through this big thing, and it's all performative because they actually already have a job lined up in the defense sector.
Right. All right. Sorry. Just kind of reading chat here. Just try to keep up. Didn't earn it. Yeah, exactly right. So let's look at this story here. Pentagon reluctantly admits Russian incremental gains in eastern Ukraine. With just days to go before the United States gets a new commander-in-chief, the Pentagon has made a rare admission acknowledging that Russian forces are basically dominating on the battlefield in Ukraine. Pentagon, during its daily press briefing on Monday, acknowledged that Russian forces' incremental gains in the Donbass. Below is the question and the answer transcript. Question, and then a completely different topic. Can you give us an update on the Ukrainian battlefield? Does Putin indeed have the upper hand right now? and this is Major General Pat Ryder. He's the Pentagon press secretary. He says, well, what we're seeing on the battlefield is that, especially in the East, Russia has made some incremental gains. Of course, it's been very tough fighting as well in the Kursk region. But when you talk about the upper hand, of course, tactically, again, other than those incremental gains, what we're seeing strategically is that, again, Russia has not achieved any of its strategic objective that it set for itself almost 3 years ago. So what he doesn't say is that, yes, relative to where we were 6 months ago, Ukraine is on the back foot and Russia is pushing forward. Now, if you want to say something positive on the Ukrainian side, it's that they are causing a hell of a lot of casualties to these Russian assaults that are going on in the Donbass area. But ultimately, I think the assault forces many times are some of the forces that Russia can easily kind of do without. That's what we saw with the when Wagner was kind of assaulting and took Bakhmut. They were using, they're basically the lowest quality troops as the meat shield for the more kind of specialized and focused forces that would then fire at, both direct fire and indirect fire positions that would then subsequently allow them to gain ground and then push your meat shield back into the fight again. So just thoughts on this kind of statement from the Pentagon, Joe?
I think that they have to acknowledge it because they know that a peace is coming. And if they continue to say, no, Ukraine is winning, then all of a sudden Ukraine accepts a less than ideal peace agreement, they look silly. So they have to admit the obvious gains. The gains are actually more than incremental, right? When you look at them over a week time frame instead of a daily time frame, they're actually fairly decent gains for modern combat. With two entrenched sides. So I think they just have no choice but to face reality, or they lose credibility.
Yeah, 100%. I see this ultimately as the kind of the last minute shuffling of the deck so that they get the best deal they can at the beginning of the new Trump administration. But we'll see. We'll see. There's still time. So this is a little long. It's like 2 minutes, 50 seconds. But the video down below, right there, it kind of advance it to about 1 minute, 40 seconds. Advance that video to 1 minute, 40 seconds and then play it from there. And you can kind of see what's happened since the big moves have started to be made in the eastern portion of Ukraine. Right about there. So this is the kind of, where we were kind of last winter, at the beginning of last winter. And you can see these kind of pushes that they're making. And Joe, one of the things that we talked about during the Kursk offensive is how they would, advance in these kind of narrow projections along high-speed avenues of approach. We see the Russians doing exactly that. And so this is they're the big city there, and the kind of the upper center of is Pokrovsk, and that's that big logistics hub with multiple high-speed avenues of approach. And this is where ultimately Russia is trying to surround and seize. Honestly. We haven't had a little. This is almost like a map segment, we're talking about
almost
Ukraine, and we're having a little map, Now, I will say that as this war has gone on, the map videos and the progressions and things like that have become pretty damn good. Actually, there's some pretty good visualizations for how this has gone. The Russian Defense Ministry reported on January 6th that Russian forces had liberated the city of Kurakov in the Donetsk People's Republic. The cities of Adivka and Ugledar were liberated in 2024. Avdiivka. They spelled it differently there. I guess that's the Russian Avdiivka, the way they spell it. The Russian defense minister said on December 16th that Ukraine's overall losses in the course of Russia's special military operation had amounted to nearly 1 million troops. I've seen a lot of big numbers being thrown around, both on the NATO side and the Russian side. I don't know exactly where to kind of take those numbers. Ultimately, I think they're probably a little exaggerated on both sides. And so something a little less is probably correct. But ultimately, one of the points that I saw made was that when you start figuring in both civilian and military, not dead, but wounded, you really do start to kind of see those numbers crank up, because there have been a lot of wounding.
At this point of a high intensity campaign where the defenders are losing, the defenders aren't fighting to the death anymore, right?
Yeah.
Firing a few rounds and then they're giving ground because at this point they're weary. They're like, look, I'm not in this anymore, man. They're smoking us, and I really am not willing to die for this. And I know a lot of you say, oh, no, those brave Ukrainians are going to fight the last man. Yeah, it's one thing to say that, and it's another thing to do it for weeks on end and all your friends are dead. Those guys lose a little dedication and they decide, hey, man, I'm gonna live to fight another day. So I think a lot of the gains are attributable to that directly, the less likelihood of them standing their ground to the end. They've seen how well their government treats them, right? Force them to make a stand in Mariupol against zero hope. There was literally no reason to defend to the last man in Mariupol, but they did. There was no reason to defend to the last man in, what was the northern town they did that in? What was the name of that town? Outside of Kharkiv, there was Bakhmut.
Yeah.
There was absolutely no reason to defend Bakhmut to the death. The bridges were already gone. They were trapped on the wrong side of a river. It made no sense, but they did anyway. And I think that does work its way down. The one group that continues to do well and has since day one of the invasion are the Ukrainian Marines. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Marine. Those guys are legitimately launching a pretty good guerrilla campaign down around Kherson, a little bit to the east of there.
Yeah.
And, but they're doing that because they're operating a true guerrilla classic fashion. They're not making stand-up fights, right? They're doing ambushes and moving, doing raids and moving. And the big Ukrainian army is just not. They're creeping their way back.
Yeah. All right. Russian military has been making slow and steady advances on Pokrovsk since summer of 2024. It represents the last big Ukrainian stronghold, the capture of which will ensure Russia's hold over the whole of Donetsk. It will give Russia the ability to cut off the E50 highway connecting Pokrovsk to the Dnipropetrovsky city of Pavlorad. This would be a major blow to the Ukrainian army's logistical operations. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this is one of those kind of things, Joe, like this kind of gets to the idea of, I think we're getting close to our finale for this Ukrainian adventure of Russia's. I think it's just getting to the point where Russia doesn't want to bleed anymore. And they also don't want to lose any more material because, let's be honest, they are one of the things that I've been really surprised by is just the absolute toll on mostly modern, armored vehicles that we've seen in this fight. I think Russia would love to stop throwing its new produced tanks and BTRs and things like that into this fight. And I think Ukraine would love to stop losing people because, Ukraine can't afford to lose people the way Russia can. So I get the feeling that both are ready at some level to tap out. Now, I could be wrong. But ultimately, I think a deal is there to be made. It's just a matter of kind of having the right kickers and the right incentives in it. So we shall see. Final thoughts on any idea on where we'll end up here in Eastern Ukraine before it's all said and done?
I'll point out, I was having a little side conversation with Corgi about the video of these jammers. Said there's something in a 3D printed box attached to them. That's a tiny SA Ultra, which you can buy for about $150 from brushbeater.store. And basically what it will do is if you've got it up in the area and there are drones operating, you're going to see a spike on the specific frequency being used by the drone. Therefore, you can dial your jammer right in on that frequency and that line of bearing and put an end to it. And I'll tell you, we use those. We demonstrate the use of them in the Scout and Recce course by us on the OPFOR finding where the students are coming from using a Yagi antenna and a tiny SA, and it's never taken us more than 5 seconds to pinpoint exactly where that radio frequency is coming from. So,
yeah. I mean, it's. Hey, did you see the video that got shared over the weekend with a little nod to Brush Beater, NC Scouts kind of mention on that? I thought that was a really good demonstration of how those frequency analyzers work and show that spike when you've got a drone in the air. I thought that was a good video. So.
Yeah, we're doing a lot more with that in the Scout and Recce courses, drone and counter drone and all that kind of stuff. So.
Well, that's the reality that we're going to start seeing. These drones may not be the future of warfare, but it's the right now of warfare. That's for damn sure. And even the U.S. Army has thrown itself into the whole idea of fielding these types of FPV and other kind of quadcopter style drones.
I will say this, though, that they're actually far easier to defeat than you might think, and the key to that is light infantry skill and a little bit of technological knowledge. Like carry around a UV spotlight that will damage the drone's sensors pretty quick. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it definitely. Does the UV light damage the sensors, or does it just kind of blind them?
Both.
Okay.
If it's done at a high enough intensity for a long enough period of time, it will damage them.
Yeah, sure. All right. Let's move on to our last topic here. So, this kind of gets to one of the points we were just making is that Ukraine is, if NATO is saying this, then that means Ukraine is almost ready to tap out. Essentially, Ukraine not yet strong enough position for negotiations. NATO chief said. So basically, this is NATO saying, "Oh, we need to get the Ukraine on the on the offensive first before we let them throw in the towel because this." They're not in a good position right now. They don't have anywhere to negotiate, essentially, because they don't have enough Russian land that they've seized or whatever. Head of the NATO treaty organization just made an admission which surely won't help Ukraine at the negotiating tables and in any potential future talks. The other side of this, Joe, for me, is the fact that any world leader that would be this, I don't want to say brazen, but just fucking stupid is probably the better word for it, to make an admission like this. NATO Secretary Mark Rutte on Monday, a leftist from Denmark, not Denmark, the Netherlands, so obviously not a very smart person, described that the Ukraine is not yet strong in position to begin peace talks now with less than a week before President-elect Donald Trump enters the White House. At this moment, clearly Ukraine is not there. He told the European Parliament, Foreign Affairs, and Defense Committees, because they cannot at this moment negotiate from a position of strength. And we have to do more to make sure by changing trajectory of the conflict that they can get to a position of strength. It sounds like a lot of gobbledygook to me, Joe.
Denmark, also known as the Rhode Island of Europe, that defensive powerhouse, Denmark. So
yes.
very
Well, and they're getting ready to lose their they're so svelte and defensive minded. The Greenland now is asking America to buy it. So the irony has definitely wrapped itself well there. He says it's too early too early now to exactly sketch out what exactly that will mean. Also, something we have to discuss with the incoming U.S. administration, he said. But let's hope that we will get to that point as soon as possible. He said that the latest energy sanctions placed on Russia were not intended to be a bargaining chip, but they definitely will become a bargaining chip. You can damn well see that as to happening. There's no expectation right now that either side is ready to negotiate. It's up to the President Trump's team in reality. It's entirely up to the next administration to determine whether or not and on what terms they might lift any sanctions that we put in place. Kremlin has described this as a sanctions trap left by the Biden administration to make things harder for Trump to negotiate and maneuver. Joe, I hear these kind of like Trump proofing and sanctions trap and some of these other kind of words that I've heard. I think it's going to, if the Trump administration is decisive, I think that most of that will be fairly easy to avoid. You just have to be willing to basically throw everything out in order to get around it. Let's see.
I'm hoping that Yorick is saying that tongue in cheek, that Argentina could be the peacekeeping force between Ukraine and Russia, because Argentina is probably the last place that Russia would accept. Argentina is the only other country that still maintains a Banderite flag as one of their national ensigns. So, yeah, I don't think Russia will accept Argentina. Let's pick the only other country with a history of Nazism in the world.
Yeah,
throw them
exactly right. Yeah, the Nazis in the Ukraine working with the Nazis in Argentina.
And for those who don't know, the Argentine army does still have a Banderite version of the Argentinian flag that they use as a battle standard. So a little troubling.
Let's see. Of course, we are well aware that the administration will try to leave the most difficult legacy possible for bilateral relations to Trump and his associates. We believe our actions are so. Biden officials have framed the sanction as long-term strategy. We believe our actions are leaving a solid foundation on which to the next administration can build. The official said, predicting the measures would cost Russia billions in monthly revenue. And force hard decisions between sustaining its economy. The irony, Joe, is, and we identified this. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Joe. I think we were one of the first places I saw this on the internet that was basically saying sanctions aren't going to work. These types of anti-oil sanction, anti-gas sanctions against Russia are just not going to work because they'll always find a market to sell their product. Hell, they were selling it to Europe as long as they sold it at the price cap. And in places like India and places like that, they were selling it above the price cap. They were selling for market price in a lot of the other places in the world. So yeah, I mean, I think this is just the fallacy of how these sanctions work.
Well, look, putting the price cap on there was one more proof that liberals believe themselves to be the world's superior people. If the Europeans only buy it at a certain rate, Russia will have to cave under because those backwards people in the global south couldn't possibly afford it. And then they did in big numbers, right? Brazil's a pretty big consumer of petroleum products, right? So it's just one more thing when we say if it's not Western Europe, it's going to cripple the rest of the world. We're one small portion of the global market now. The world has gotten much bigger and much more free trade, right?
Sorry, I was reading something here. Biden didn't do this before the election because it hikes the U.S. gas prices. Yeah, that's a great, this whole thing is essentially it's a useless exercise that the United States consumer gets to pay for, because it affects our prices at the pump. And ultimately, if Trump decides he wants to get rid of the sanctions, he can just do that with a snap of the finger, and a signature of the pen. This is not hard to do. It's just a matter of he has to decide he's willing to do it. And that might be the thing that he's not willing to do, is he doesn't want to look bad. So, all right. Anything else in Ukraine, Joe? Anything that's kind of come up in your? I did see something. I did see something where the members of the Trump administration, the incoming Trump administration, were saying that they should decrease the conscription age down to 18. I was like, well, okay.
Well, what a novel idea. The same as the rest of the world. What?
Yeah, I know. The fact that Ukraine hasn't done that makes me kind of think, what, you mean, like, you're only willing to sacrifice your 40-year-olds? You're not willing to sacrifice
the fact that Ukraine still has an active and ongoing club scene, and there are bands still making concert tours for Kiev, and the fact that I have tickets to the Kiev Ballet next week, performing in Big Fork, Montana. No, not my idea. It tells you that it's not an all-out war that they seem to be claiming, right? So.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. The club scene's got to continue, Joe. Somebody's got to, be able to dance for the DJ.
I asked the person who bought the tickets, who's sleeping back the other way, that is it all right if I make an outburst at the very end of the Kiev Ballet? And she goes, just make sure I'm already out of my seat. So
you want to put the big, Zelensky sucks banner up.
We're practicing a couple of Russian phrases. It's going to be good.
Suka doesn't count, does it, for the
well, there'll be a Suka Pajalsta in there somewhere, but
all right, let's move on to our next topic here. This is segment 2, the Hegseth Hoedown. Joe, I don't know if you followed any of the
first of all, I just want to talk to you about the need for you to improve your title making ability. Okay, Hegseth Hoedown. Come on,
man. The comedy that came out of it is kind of what I'm, Yeah, I did think about Hegseth Haymaker. It was several.
That would have been better. That would have been way better.
I like the idea of a giant congressional square dance is where I was going.
That's because you're from Kentucky.
That's true. I still have fond memories of Hee Haw. All right, so this is the story from Zero Hedge, and then we'll look at some video here. Pete Hegseth, who was tapped by President-elect Donald Trump as Defense Secretary, faced a critical test at his confirmation hearing before the Senate Armed Services Committee yesterday. The 44-year-old Army National Guard veteran and former Fox News host was deployed to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Guantanamo Bay, earning 2 Bronze Stars and a CIB along the way. Democrats have been instructed by Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer to not hold back when it comes to the confirmation hearings for Trump nominees. The irony is that we're going to see that it's in a minute. They didn't send their best and their brightest to go up against old Pete. And I like this. Let's see. Warren has said, this is Elizabeth Warren, said that Hegseth is unfit to serve, referring to him as in one point in a 33-page letter from last week as an insider threat due to the tattoo she claims tied to right-wing extremism. And then ironically enough, we've got the tactical wisdom says itself here. The Jerusalem Cross on the program for Jimmy Carter's funeral. So clearly, Pete Hegseth and Jimmy Carter, 2 like-minded far-right extremists.
So let me just address this. She called it tied to right-wing extremism. Does anyone know what the Jerusalem cross actually represents?
The
Aside
city
from
of Jerusalem, right?
the kingdom of Jerusalem, aside from that, why is there one large and four small?
Oh, I
cross?
don't know that. I don't know the
Represents
symbology.
Jesus and the four evangelists and the 5 wounds that Jesus suffered at the hands of the Romans. So think about this. Thank you, Squishy Hunter. Well done. Just say that that's right-wing extremism. Okay, then good. I'm a right-wing extremist. I'm 100% down with that because it actually represents Jesus and the work he did. Okay. Call that extreme. Don't care.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Had to go off for a minute.
No, absolutely, though, Joe. I mean, this is a time-tested Christian symbol. Like, this is as pure as driven snow, and this just goes to show you the depths of depravity that Marxists will go to smear Christians. Let's see, sweeping changes. Hegseth has vowed to eliminate woke policies as at the Pentagon and refocus America on military readiness. Expects him to face questions about a drinking problem alleged by anonymous sources. Let's see. It says here, it's true that I don't have a similar biography to Defense Secretary in the last 30 years. Hegseth is expected to say, but as President Trump has told me, we've repeatedly placed people at the top of the Pentagon with the right credentials, whether they're retired generals, academics, or defense contract executives. And where has it gotten us? He believes, and I humbly agree, that it's time to give someone with dust on his boots at the helm. I agree with this. I mean, the irony is the last SecDef that we had that had any real kind of like squad level experience, like in the Army, was the senator that came after. What was his name? After Panetta, who was, worked for the Biden administration there towards the end, like 12, 13, that time frame. I can't remember. He was a former senator. Oh, this is killing me. If chat knows, that would be awesome. I'm sorry, I'm looking it up right now because I can't stand not knowing who it was. Here we go. I got the list here on. Let's see. Chuck Hagel, that's the one, right? I know. I just wanted to verify it myself. Yeah, because he took over in February of 13, and he was like an E5 squad leader, I think, was what he left the military at. But that was back, a long time ago. And then he became a senator after that. So, though I didn't think he was a very good SecDef, if I'm honest, but I liked Ash Carter better. But he was still, that's Obama guys. All right. Let's go on to the next bit. I want to show off some of this. Let's see. We've got this Fox News article. Let's see what they play here.
Now, Mr. Hegseth, you have written that after they retire, generals should be banned from working in the defense industry for 10 years. You and I agree on the corrosive effects of the revolving door between the Pentagon and defense contractors. It's something I would have liked to talk with you about if you'd come and been willing to visit with me. But the question I have for you on this is, will you put your money where your mouth is and agree that when you leave this job, you will not work for the defense industry for 10 years?
Senator, it's not even a question I've thought about because it's not
about it right now.
It's not one. My motivation for this job.
I understand that. I just need a yes or no here.
Come next.
Time is short. I just need a yes or no.
I would consult with the president about what the policy should be
In
at the Defense
other
Department.
words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. You're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one. Let's just be
That's
clear.
what I was
In
going
charge
to
of-
say.
Oh man,
That's a pretty good. This kind of set the tone for me on almost everything that I saw. Let's go down to the next one.
I'll be
which
honest,
is
I would
the-
rather have a defense secretary go into the defense industry than a general. Because
Oh,
a general
100%.
is an end user. The defense secretary understands more the big picture of the budgeting and systems wide aspect. So
Oh, T, that's inappropriate. Everybody knows she's not an actual Indian. Don't denigrate the native what is it, the noble savages, you know.
yeah, man, I got to go across the reservation almost every day. So please don't make them mad at our show because we said that.
All right, Watcher, open up the Vigilant Fox, thread here and play the first of these. These are, he had a lot of protesting, so go down to the first one underneath that one there. Yeah, play that one.
And literally having my back.
You are a misogynist. Not only that, you are a Christian Zionist.
Christian Zionist misogynist.
I want to thank the authorities for their swift reaction to that outbreak.
take your hands off my penis.
Yeah, so that happened several more times. So I think there were like 5 or 6 disruptions. So let's.
Hegseth wasn't drinking water. That was vodka. My man needed it.
Yeah. So I
So
thought that this
is
one
the
was
first one after the
Yeah,
protests, from what I can see.
Yeah, this one right here, because he talks about how the media came after him and how nobody was willing to go on the record that had all these allegations.
The Department of Defense under Donald Trump will achieve peace through strength. And in pursuing these America First national security goals will remain patriotically apolitical and stridently constitutional. Unlike the current administration, politics should play no part in military matters. We are not Republicans. We are not Democrats. We are American warriors. Our standards will be high and they will be equal, not equitable. That's a very different word. We need to make sure every warrior is fully qualified on their assigned weapons system, every pilot's fully qualified and current on the aircraft they are flying. And every general or flag officer is selected for leadership or promotion purely based on performance, readiness, and merit. Leaders at all levels will be held accountable, and warfighting and lethality and the readiness of the troops and their families will be our only focus. This has been my focus ever since I first put on the uniform as a young Army officer cadet.
So this kind of gives you a little bit of his mentality going into this, right? I want to now kind of bring up some of the criticisms. The first one is Kirsten Gillibrand or Gillibrand. It's there's a lot of
I don't want
shrill.
you thinking, can't serve if you're a mom, can't serve if you're LGBTQ, and then last, can't serve if you're a leftist. The statements you said about people who have views differently than you, that we're the enemy, are you saying that 50% of the DOD, if they hold liberal views or leftist views or are Democrats, are not welcome in the military? Are you saying that?
Senator, I volunteered to deploy to Afghanistan under Democrat President Barack Obama. I also volunteered to guard the inauguration of Joe Biden, but was denied the opportunity to serve because I was identified as an extremist by my own unit for a Christian tattoo.
I don't want you thinking.
Yeah.
So her argument is a little ridiculous because they literally spent years purging anyone to the right of Mao. Yeah, I stole that from Don. from the United States military very publicly, right? It's a very, very silly argument to make. And for folks to be screaming out, but you're a Christian, that's a little troubling to me, because Christianity is not a bad thing. It's weird.
Yeah. Let's move. Let's see. I don't think we need to watch the Mike Rounds one. That's the next one. Let's go into the one after that. Yeah. Maisie Hirono.
Moving on. President-elect has attacked our allies in recent weeks, refusing to rule out using military force to take over Greenland and the Panama Canal, and threatening to make Canada the 51st state. Would you carry out an order from President Trump to seize Greenland, a territory of our NATO ally Denmark, by force, or would you comply with an order to take over the Panama Canal?
Senator, I will emphasize that President Trump received 77 million votes to be the lawful
We're
commander-in-chief
not
of
talking
this
about
country.
the election. My question is, would you use our military to take over Greenland or an ally of Denmark?
Senator, one of the things that President Trump is so good at is never strategically tipping his hand. And so I would never in this public forum give one way or another direct what orders the president would give me in any context.
That sounds to me that you would contemplate carrying out such an order to basically invade Greenland.
It's a perjury trap.
Yeah.
Because if he says no, I'm not going to use force for those, well, then he is setting himself up to be charged with not following a lawful order. And two, if he says yes, it's a way for them to deny him. It's a stupid question to answer in either way. Right?
Yeah, I was thinking.
Right. Donald Trump is the commander in chief. If he gives an order, I'm going to execute the order.
Yeah, right. If he gives me a legal order, I will execute any legal order that he gives me.
Speaking of verbal traps, the literal next one in line is Tim Kaine attempted to pull a "When did you stop beating your wife?"
My life, and thankfully, I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
In finalizing divorces from your first and second wives, were there non-disclosure agreements in connection with those divorces?
Senator, not that I'm aware of.
If there were, would you agree to release those first and second wives from any confidentiality agreement?
Senator, it's not something I'm aware of.
But if there were, you would agree to release them from a confidentiality agreement?
Senator, that's not my responsibility.
Did you ever engage in any acts of physical violence against any of your wives?
Senator, absolutely not.
But you would agree with me that if someone had committed physical violence against a spouse, that would be disqualifying to serve as Secretary of Defense, correct?
Senator, absolutely not have I ever done that.
You would agree that that would be a disqualifying offense, would you not?
Senator, you're talking about a hypothetical.
I don't think it's a hypothetical. Violence against spouses occurs every day. And if you as a leader are not capable of saying that physical violence against a spouse should be a disqualifying fact for being secretary of the most powerful nation in the world, you're demonstrating an astonishing lack of judgment. The incident in Monterey led to a criminal charge, a criminal investigation, a private settlement, and a cash payment to the woman who filed the complaint. And there was also a non-disclosure agreement, correct?
It was a confidential settlement agreement off of a nuisance lawsuit.
Right. During an interview, you claimed that you settled the matter because you were worried that if it became public, it might hurt your career. Do you maintain that you were blackmailed?
Senator, I maintain that false claims were made against me. And ultimately,
your attorney
those
used
false
the
claims,
phrase,
I have the opportunity to attest my innocence in those false claims.
Well answered, I think.
I think that the biggest crime in all of that is Tim Kennedy's hair. I mean, Tim Kaine's hair. Well, Tim Kennedy's
hair.
But
Angus King provides our next one, and I talk about this face reminds me of like an iceberg.
The way we fought our wars back when the Geneva Conventions were written are a lot different than the asymmetric, non-conventional environment of counterinsurgency that I confronted in Iraq and Afghanistan. I was the senior counterinsurgency instructor in Afghanistan. My job was to understand how the Taliban and Al-Qaeda operated so that NATO units coming in could be informed of what was happening. They knew our rules of engagement, and when they were more restrictive, they took advantage of them, and it put our men and women in a more dangerous and difficult place.
And you believe
For future wars we fight, we need to have someone atop the Pentagon, sir, who understands how those ripple effects
Well, I just want
impact
to
the men and women
understand
in
your
uniform.
position. Your position is torture's okay. Is that correct? Waterboarding, torture is no longer prohibited, given the circumstances of whatever war we have. Is that correct?
That's not what I said. I've never been party to torture. We are a country that fights by the rule of law, and our men and women always do. And yet we have too many people here in air-conditioned offices that like to point fingers at the guys in dark and dangerous places, the gals in helicopters in enemy territory who are doing things that people in Washington, D.C. would never dare to do, or send, in many cases.
In one of your interviews, you said they're willing to do this. You're talking about Donald Trump and.
Was there more to this one, or?
Well, he goes on to just kind of
Trump and Senator Cruz, they're willing to do something like waterboarding if it's going to keep us safe. Are you okay with waterboarding?
Senator, the law of the land is that waterboarding is not legal.
So the statement that you made, you now recant. Is that correct? They are willing to do something like waterboarding if it's going to keep us safe. You expressed that with approval.
Senator, I'm very familiar with that as a concept, having spent a year at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, guarding 700 of those that attacked us on 9/11.
I just want to be clear. Are we going to abide by the Geneva Convention and the prohibitions on torture, or are we not? Is it going to depend on the circumstances?
As I've stated multiple times, the Geneva Conventions are what we base ours. But what an American first national security policy is not going to do is hand its prerogatives over to international bodies that make decisions about how our men and women make decisions on the battlefield. America First understands we send Americans for a clear mission and a clear objective. We equip them properly for that objective.
Right,
we give them everything they need, and then we stand behind them.
All right. Moving along. Oh, yeah, this is Elizabeth Warren. I think we probably heard this one already.
Yeah. I've had all the shrill I can handle today, thanks.
Let me point something out. They're pretending like the United States government, Department of Defense, should only be doing things that are 100% legal and above board. I agree with that. Why are we in Syria, and what's the legal basis for it? Anybody?
Amen, brother.
I mean, every continued moment that we are in Syria is a violation of the law, and we continue to do it anyway. So being a Puritan on the topic of waterboarding, which is, I'll come out and say it, torture is bad. But being a Puritan on that is a little bit silly when we are drone bombing janitors as cover for a failed evacuation. I mean, the whole thing is silly.
I appreciate you adhering to the bold takes only stance there, Joe. It's an awful bold one. Torture bad.
Yeah,
right. Anyway, so this all kind of builds up to this final video here that I thought. So at least let's get one of the good guys, Representative. So this is somebody near and dear to your heart there, Joe. I'm sorry, it's the link underneath. It's the bottom link on the show prep document. It's Sheehy's question. Yeah, there you go. I thought this was a good back and forth. And real quick, she is actually asking questions that are important, right? These are actually important questions, like building ships and things like this. Go ahead.
We need sound, though.
Yeah, the sound is.
I got one final question that's very important to me. This is more of a technical question, but I think it's to fix the Army in this country is a 1 or 2 year problem. We can make bullets, we can make rifles. Fix the Air Force might be a 5-year problem. To fix our Navy is a decades-long pursuit. How are you going to fix our national? You don't have all the power. We're not China. Unfortunately, you can't snap your fingers. But how are you going to lead an initiative within the DoD to reinvigorate our national shipbuilding industry so we are able to compete with China? Because freedom of navigation is critical to our economy and the global economy. It's going to be a very important task for you to complete.
It's a critical question, Senator, and that's why I'm grateful that President Trump has said definitively to me and publicly that shipbuilding will be one of his absolute top priorities of this administration. So a lot of it does go into pulling things up into the OSD's office, Secretary of Defense's office, to shine a spotlight on it, to make sure the bureaucracy doesn't strangle important initiatives that need to happen. We need to reinvigorate our defense industrial base in this country to include our shipbuilding capacity. Some of it is on the east, some of it's on the west, some of it's on the Great Lakes. The workforce problems that our shipyards are facing are significant, and there's been a big investment from this committee, I know, in a lot of those places because of the shortfalls, manpower issues, everything else. We also see adversaries that have been able to innovate themselves in ways that their shipbuilding capacity is, I won't reveal it at this hearing, multitudes and multitudes beyond our capabilities. So it needs to be a rapid investment, a rapid fielding, and then we need to incentivize outside entities to fill the gap. We talk a lot about UAVs. UAVs are very important, but there's also a future of UUVs, unmanned underwater vehicles, that will be a part of amplifying the impact of our Navy, because this administration has allowed our number of ships to drop below 300. It sets a projection of 340 or 350, but doesn't create the capacity to actually address it. And so if we're going to defend our interests, our allies, and put America first, we're going to have to be able to project power. That it means shipbuilding. It means historic investments in our defense industrial base there. And then also driving innovation and cost savings in ways that only business leaders inside the Pentagon can do.
I thought that was a good kind of question that allowed him to actually, show some of his understanding of the larger issues that face somebody.
Instead of addressing personal attacks, actually address the job. Crazy thought process.
Crazy shot. Well, the irony is that he also asked him, what is the round of an M4 rifle? How many rounds in a magazine for the M4 rifle? What round does the M9 shoot? And so he was asking him questions, but he made the point. It's like, listen, you have just demonstrated that you have more basic understanding of the weapon systems of the warfighters than almost anybody in this room. And of course, Tim Sheehy, I think he was a Navy SEAL. I can't remember what he did.
He was a Navy SEAL.
Yeah, so he clearly knows this kind of stuff too. So it's not like, but I thought that was ironic that Sheehy was asking those kind of questions, because it actually established, Hegseth as somebody who does understand what the hell's going on out there better than almost anybody on the Armed Services Committee. I don't know. Tammy Duckworth, she was a Apache pilot, back in the day. Or a Black Hawk pilot, something like that. So she's got a little credit there. I don't know all the backgrounds of all the other people, but pretty sure Maisie Hirono was never in the military.
The closest thing in the military she did is she once performed at a luau and did sort of and that's
for a bunch of Navy guys who were telling her to take off the coconuts.
It was troubling to hear the term 300 ship Navy. Like that was a goal to aspire to.
Oh my God! Yeah.
In the 80s, we had a 500, almost 600 ship Navy. So,
yeah.
Man, that's sad. China has 300 amphibs, just so you know.
Hey, Watcher, real quick, can you play the first of the little meme video that I shared with you? This is really what Watcher was when I played this for him.
God,
this is what really set him over. This is essentially what Hegseth. If you want the short version of what Hegseth went through, it's this.
This should be considered a war crime.
Yeah, this is a war crime.
Here you go.
Yeah, are you willing to support our veterans organizations that will help our veterans get every damn thing that they deserve because they signed on the dotted line? Just like
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to do it. If I had to see it, then you guys had to see
Somebody
it.
said, I'd like to talk to the manager of the Pentagon.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
All right. Joe, wrapping it up, final thoughts.
I think that the job of the United States Senate is not to scold people and castigate people. It's to run the business of running our nation. And this was not it. This was literally just an opportunity to force a man to listen to them accuse him of horrible things and not react. And that's just terrible that we fall into that point. That's all.
Fair. Yeah. Watcher?
On this issue specifically?
Well, just any, you know.
Oh, okay. So
we're in the wrapping up the show portion.
Well, I appreciate everybody for following us back into the morning slot, and a lot of people here, a lot of people supporting. Please make sure you hit the like button. We need them. We crave them. They help us to spread. Keep your eyes a swivel. There are leftist groups whose brains are currently baking inside their skulls at the thought of Trump becoming president again. They've already taken 2 shots at him as we've gone over here, and expecting them to take a third is not out of the wheelhouse.
Yeah, fair. I'll be honest with you. I think Joe, I still think we've got some sort of something's going to pop up between now and the inauguration. I just got a bad feeling, and it very well could happen to that crowd that's in the that's coming for the inauguration. Something like a copycat, like a vehicle attack or something along these lines.
Well, they're really setting us up for the vehicle attack. And they're also really setting us up for a Chinese attack on our power grid, because they've been talking about that for about 2 weeks straight.
Yeah.
China's completely inside of our power grid and blah, blah, blah. So it's nice of them to set the blame before the attack actually happens.
I agree with that. I think it's I hope I'm wrong, but I just feel like it could be some bad juju. All right, guys, that's all I got for today. I appreciate Joe jumping in here, and Watcher, as always, helping me get everything set up. Guys, we'll be back on the normal time Friday. It's the morning show now that I'm back in Korea, and we're all kind of back on the old schedule. So we will see you on Friday. If you haven't done it already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, share this video or this, the channel link out with your friends. Let them know you're getting some good stuff here on the Council on Future Conflicts. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe.